Think environmentally and plant responsibly is made possible through support provided by the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development Hort Fund and the Michigan Invasive Plant Council, presented by the Michigan State University Department of Horticulture.
Without a doubt, plants are the foundation of our outdoor environment. The diversity of plant species and the multitude of cultivars, hybrids, and varieties make for appealing and creative garden compositions. We may choose plants because of their ornamental appeal or because they serve a specific purpose. Others may be selected because of their adaptability in poor soils or simply for ease of care. However, depending on where we live, certain invasive plants can spread beyond our boundaries and negatively impact our neighborhoods and communities. As thoughtful gardeners, our goal is to think environmentally and plant responsibly. This means being aware of plant behaviors and learning to grow the right plant in the right place. Right plant, right place guides plant selection and use. It examines several factors: function, aesthetics, site adaptability, maintenance, and behavior. Function refers to the purpose the plant will serve in the garden, such as providing a screen, blocking unwanted views, stabilizing a soil bank, or attracting wildlife. Aesthetic qualities include the overall habit or shape of the plant and its foliage, flowers, fruit, and bark. Site adaptability refers to the plant's cold hardiness and tolerance to soil type, exposure, and light levels. It will determine whether your plant will perform to your expectations. Maintenance guides the development of the plant and is important for its long-term success in the garden. Environmentally responsible plant use adds one more factor into the equation: plant behavior. Plant behavior broadly defines its habit, reproductive characteristics, and ability to spread, establish, and cause harm.
Biological characteristics affect how a plant spreads and how it reproduces. And how the plant spreads and reproduces affect the potential of that plant to be invasive or not invasive. Plants are capable of moving naturally or unnaturally. Some natural means would be by things like wind and water and animals or wildlife. Birds can pick up seeds, fly to another place and drop the seed. They can drop into a stream or into a lake, and they can be moved by currents or waves. When plants are moved around by people, we would consider that to be by unnatural means. Plants are a lot like people in the sense that there's variation. We're all members of the same species, but we come in different flavors, if you will. Some of us have blue eyes, others have brown eyes. With plants, it's possible to have a plant that is one particular species, but there can be significant variations within that species, which we call varieties or cultivars. Plants can vary in how fast they spread, whether they produce seed or not, whether they're blue or green in color, and the color of their flowers.
Regional climate, including temperature and rainfall, as well as soils, can also significantly influence plant behavior. Plants can be invasive in some regions and not in others. It is commonly agreed that the potential for a particular plant to behave invasively depends on the region in which it exists.
As gardeners, it's important that we understand when we buy a plant, how is that plant going to move? How is it going to reproduce? When we know those things, then we can determine the appropriate place to site that plant within our landscapes.
A lot of people ask me if a plant is considered invasive, that plant growing in the wild. Are all the plants that are being sold in garden centers that we use in our gardens and in our landscapes, are those plants invasive too? I'd say absolutely not. And the thing to realize is that there are many plants that are being sold and grown today that have been selected, hybridized, and bred by nursery people and plant breeders to give us very unique and distinct plants. Plants with better behavior, plants that have different flower colors, that are free of insect and disease issues, plants that are going to be much better suited for an urban environment. A good example is this butterfly bush. It's big, it's rangy, it makes seeds. And so in some locations it's even invasive. But through hybridizing and doing wide crosses with cultivars and different hybrids, we are able to develop new plants like this particular variety here. It's dwarf, it's more colorful, and it's seedless, so we don't have a problem with invasiveness. We have examples of wide crosses that we're probably familiar with. Take, for example, the mule. It's a cross between a horse and a donkey, and the resulting wide cross is a mule, and it's incapable of making any offspring. The same phenomenon works when you cross two wide species in the plant world. You can create a plant that does not produce offspring and thus is not going to be invasive. There's another technique, it's called creating a triploid, which is essentially increasing the number of chromosomes in the plant. And this can happen both in nature and during the breeding process. We have the technology, we have the tools, we can create plants and tame plants that were once invasive and make them environmentally friendly.
You might be wondering, does plant placement in the landscape influence invasive impact? In short, the answer is yes. Plants that drop their seed in close proximity and don't travel long distances can be used in gardens away from natural areas. Ground covers are popular plants. They help us to reduce maintenance, and what they're really good at is covering up the ground so that the ground doesn't grow weeds. But it's this quality of covering up the ground that in the wrong place can be considered weedy. You wouldn't want to site them along the border of your property if your property adjoins a natural area, because you'd just be inviting them to spread into that natural area. So what you should do is you should site them internally in your property and use them there, or if you need to use them on the border of your property, make sure that you have a suitable edging that keeps them within bounds.
I see a lot of websites out there that deal with the issue of plant invasiveness. People will say something along the lines of, a native plant is going to be a better grower in your garden. It's going to have fewer insect and disease problems. This is simply not true. If you stop and think about it, our yards, our parks, our cityscapes, these are not natural landscapes. So the plants that we choose really have to be plants that are adapted and will grow well in those situations. Now, there are some plants that have evolved under very narrow restraints of the type of soil and climate that they can grow in. Typically, they're not very good landscape plants because they need a really exact, perfect environment. But other plants are native to very wide ranges of climates, very wide ranges of soil conditions. These plants tend to be more adaptable, and they do make better landscape plants for our urban situations. It really comes down to choosing the right plant for the right place. Not necessarily whether it's native or whether it's not native. We really want a plant that's going to perform well based under those conditions that we're growing it in.
Let's review what we've learned. First, as thoughtful gardeners, we understand that for each environment there is a right plant and a right place. Right plant, right place examines function, aesthetics, site adaptability, maintenance, and behavior when selecting plants. How plants move influences where they are placed in the garden or even which gardens they can be effectively used in. Sometimes cultivars and hybrids are available which minimize invasive behaviors. The issue is whether or not the plant is invasive, not if it is native. Remember, healthy environments depend on us, so think environmentally and plant responsibly.